Yo everyone, today I'm going to teach you how to master Imola on F1 2025. First of all, by doing a slow speed lap explaining every single corner around this circuit. After that, how you can adjust the time trial world record setup to be usable in an online race and or career mode, GP mode or any mode that you'd like to be doing. Wrapping up the video with a full speed qualifying lap example, including my ERS strategy. So that being said, let's get into the slow speed lap. Of course, you're going to be opening up DRS down the pitch straight, but you really want to be taking the shortest distance possible and cutting over the inside here as much as you can. Just make sure not to fully cross over this, as then you might risk the sort of invalidation. It's very, very difficult to do so, but yeah, just keep one wheel in contact with the normal part of the road. Coming down towards the end of the straight though, it's really curved into the braking zone, what makes it really difficult because you can't approach a corner in a traditional straight line braking. So you're going to be arriving to turn 1, you're going to be braking sort of at 60, 65 meters, maybe 70, depending on your confidence going into the corner. So if you're not that confident, brake about 70 meters before the corner. But as you can see that we're approaching an angle instead of approaching at a straight line. The reason is, it's just so difficult to be approaching this corner in a straight line because you're coming off a curved sort of segment of track directly before the braking zone. So it's much better and much more efficient to be approaching an angle, and then once you reach the outside of the track to be using that as your turn-in point. So you're going to see braking, let's say 70 meters before the corner, and then ideally you get as far out as possible right up to the red part of the curbing before turning in, and that's the ideal way to be doing it. Turn 1 track limits and track limits around this track in general are very loose, to put it bluntly, and you can really abuse them quite a lot. So you can see going fully over the inside curbing here, then fully over the curbing on the right hand side as well is the ideal way to be doing it. It's very difficult to do because a car will bottom out over the curbing, but if you can get it right, you will be gaining so much lap time, it's funny. But yeah, the track limits around here are easily exploitable, so make sure that you do that as well. Coming into chicane, this is a really tricky area to be maximising performance though, on the outside curbing and turning in sort of as late as you possibly can. The reason is you don't want to be travelling that straight over this part of the curbing. As I mentioned, you will bottom out over the curbing. You can see it's happening just slightly fractionally right now, but especially when you're driving with downforce and load on the car. Of course, the downforce is pushing the car into the road lower, what's meaning you have higher risk of bottoming out. But the reason you want to be approaching this curve at an angle, so then you could be setting up the following right-hander as much as possible. This is so difficult to do through here, but you really want to be getting as much over this inside curbing as possible. Of course, if you go too far, you will get the invalidation, but it's something that you really have to be feeling and understanding yourself, because there's no reference marker. There's nothing that I can really tell you in this video about how perfectly to get the cut, because you can see that the white line is so curved. The regulation is just keeping one tyre within the white line at all times, but because the corner is so curved, it's not like an additional 90-degree apex. Yeah, it's just so... It's so difficult to get these things right around this track, as you'll see from the hot lap example later. I'm fully committed to the inside curbing, but you don't have a reference for where exactly you can cut up to often around this track. This is a bit more simple one, because if you go over the white line, you will get the invalidation, and then coming into the hairpin, it's slightly uphill braking here, so you will get more braking efficiency than you normally would do if you're traveling on a flat ground or downhill. So you're going to be braking just after the 50-meter board, then going down into third gear. The car will be quite understeery here because you are sort of traveling uphill, your tyres are overheating from the previous corners as well, especially on the surface temperature. Then sort of on the exit here, you can get a bit of a snap oversteer as you get the car straighter. For two reasons, you're going to be up and over this outside curbing, so of course this will be bringing a bit of instability because it'll be lacking normal grip compared to the normal circuit. It's worth it to take because the extra track width will be more worth it than doing a tighter line with the normal surface of the road. But additionally, because you're traveling uphill again, so with the understeer mid apex and then sort of using the curbstone on the exit, the rear of the car can get a bit loosey-goosey. Heading up to a very treacherous fast left-hander here at a corner that you really have to send on the inside curbing. You'll be looking just to dab the brake here to get weight transfer to the front axle, then going as much on this inside curbing as possible. Again, you can bottom out on this curbstone, so you will have to be watching out for that, and then the exit, you're just trying to maximize the width of the track. Of course, if you go too wide, you will invalidate your lap time, but go up to the white line and you'll be sweet as a nut. Is that even a saying? Sweet as a nut? I think that is a saying in the UK, but now I say it doesn't really make sense because nuts are not that sweet. But anyway, getting back to the point, away from my food dilemma, coming into acqua minerale. I absolutely love saying acqua minerale. It's one of my favourite terms to say in the world. But you're going to be flat out for the first apex here, and you have two choices. If your car is understeering quite a lot, then try to take the inside curbstone with two tyres. The reason for doing this is then you end up with more track usage, and of course the car will rotate a little bit with addition because of the curbstone, you know. But if you have quite a loose car and a car that you're not fully confident with the rear axle yet, then avoid taking the inside curbstone, as it will naturally mean that you can start braking straighter in a straight line for the next corner. You want to be using as much road as you possibly can in the braking zone here, and then you'll be in third gear and using as much curbstone on the inside as well. The car will become a little bit unsettled around this area of the track, simply because you're starting to travel uphill and the tyres are taking so much stress throughout the lap so far. But you want to be fully on the outside curbstone, of course keeping two tyres, or one tyre at least, inside the white line to keep it valid. And then running up into the chicane, you want to be having two wheels on the outside curbing, approaching it and braking just after the 50-metre board, looking for about 40 metres before the curbstone, but after the, well, before the curbstone, yes, but of course 10 meters, 5 meters after the actual braking board of the 50-meter indicated. Going down into third gear, and this is really, as you'll see from the hot lap example later in the video, this is nuts. This is nuts how much you can cut through here. You're really just like this, sending it so hard over the inside curbing, and then you can really get away with it. So just looking at that from a third person perspective, you can see that we're really committed to the yellow part of the curbing, and now we're going to be throwing the car over. A little bit of a trick here is to try and release the brake pedal when you're on top of the curbing, because if you have the brake pedal activated, it's naturally going to be pushing a weight transfer to the front axle, and then you really don't want the suspension to be doing two things at once. You know, you want the suspension to either be focused on the turning and braking efficiency, or the efficiency to go up and over the curbing. If it's doing two things, then you're basically not getting the best out of suspension either department, you know. So really focus to try and release the brake pedal when you're on top of the curbing. Then if you do need to slow the car down even further for the second part of the corner, reactivate the brake pedal in this little zone between the two curbstones. Attack the curbing as much as you can on the inside, of course keep a tyre within the white line, but again, when you're on top of this part of the curbing, try to release it, because then you're just allowing the suspension to be free and to be focusing on absorbing the impact from the curb rather than trying to be braking. So you'll see me do that technique a little bit in the hot lap example later. Use up all the curbing on the exit of the road as well, then firing yourself down into the final corners around this track, then going into the braking zone. Very difficult here actually, because Imola is a track that you can really brake very late on. You have a very high downforce, the surface is quite grippy, but this is one of the trickiest braking zones on the track, if not the trickiest braking zone on the track, really, because the brain feels like you can brake about 50 meters before the corner, but because you're traveling downhill for what must be actually maybe even the first braking zone of the track going downhill. Of course, acqua minerale, you're downhill before, but actually when you're activating the brakes, the road is completely flat, even going uphill towards the apex onwards. So I think this actually might be the only braking zone that goes downhill in Imola, what means the brain is a bit struggling sometimes, at least for me anyway, is struggling to get this braking zone exactly spot on. So my brain wants to brake at the 50-meter board, but really you need to sort of brake at 55 meters, and to be conservative you want to brake at the 60. You have two choices here. If you do overshoot your braking zone and brake at the 50-meter board slightly, then you can end up going around this curbstone. It will not be completely optimal, but it will be very fractional the loss, maybe a quarter of a temp, maybe a half a temp at the most. But then if you want to be ideal, you go up and over the inside curbing here, and to do this you sort of are requiring to brake at the 55-60-meter board going into the corner. Pull fourth gear on the exit and use up all the road possible, and then turning in into the final apex of the lap. Again, you have two choices here. If you have a car that's slightly understeery, then take the inside curbstones that will help rotate the car around. If you have an oversteery car, don't take the inside curbstone. Allow the suspension to be free and allow your car to be focused on the exit performance, heading on to the pit straight here and running up to the start finish line. Minimize the distance, open DLS, and that is a lap here in Imola. And now we're going to be looking how you could be adjusting the time trial world record setup to be usable in an online race. The wings are very, very high here. Differential is quite high as well, and the ride height is of course quite high to be dealing with the curbstones. Maximum tire pressure on the front axle, at least I would recommend. So we're just going to be putting that up right now. Then looking over the rest of the setup, the reason that really high wings work in time trial, but they're not really working in GP mode, career mode, online races, is simply because of tire temp. When you have such high wing, with the tire temperature enabled, it puts more load, more friction, more energy into the tire, what means that you're going to be overheating the surface very more extremely. So I would maybe suggest sort of a 35, 30. If you want a bit more rear stability, maybe go slightly up. Depending on the balance of the car, maybe going about 30, 35. You can go a bit lower if you want ultimate performance, but the rest of the car maybe can be a bit unsettled because of the curbing, and depends on what you really want from the car, you know. So if you want more rotation, go lower. If you want less rotation and more stability, go higher. But the rest of the setup looks pretty decent, to be honest. So yeah, I would say maximum front tire pressure, take about 10 clicks of wings off the front and rear. Then yeah, of course, a differential is your own preference that I just previously described, and the rest of it's looking pretty solid as well. So with that being said, let's head over to the hot lap example and my ERS strategy. How to master Imola on F1 2025. Once you reach 7th gear, turn on the overtake button and burn it all the way down until 60% on the pit straight. Turn 1 is very difficult. Try to maximize the curb uses on the inside to open up the track width on the curbing once again for turn 2. Turn 3 is easily flat out and burning that overtake button down until 50%. Compromise the first corner here to open up the second, once again fully on the inside curbing. Tap the overtake button on the exit to gain a bit more momentum. On the exit of the hairpin here, really easy to get wheel spin, so just squeeze the throttle gradually and burn the overtake button down until 45%. Down 1 gear, flick it in, curbing on the inside and maximum track width on the exit, burning down until 37%, into Acrominalali, and then into the following right hander, fully on the curb on the inside and burning down until 30% on the exit. Starting the final sector, just send it over the inside curbing here, over the 2 curbings in fact, and use up all the track width on the exit, burning down until 10% here as you approach the final 2 braking zones of the lap. Braking downhill, try to commit to the curbing on the inside, pull 4th gear, roll off the power and just squeeze it like a very fragile egg on the exit and burning the overtake button right up to the start finish line, and we have done a 1 minute 12.835 with the first sector split being a 23.1, a 25.2, a 24.4 to round out the lap here in Imola. So I've been Brendon Leigh. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully this track guide helps you around this very, very technical, very difficult circuit. The curbs are there to be used. The track limits can be a bit forgiving on this track, even with the strict regulation. So just use it to your advantage, and hopefully you could be maximizing your lap time potential. With all that being said, thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video. Grazie, ciao ciao, bye bye.